the last video I'm going to talk about following Paul Copeland's Engineering Studies, a Definitive Guide on Bridges, is that he talks about suspension-style bridge. It's called the cable-stayed bridge. Now, this is different from the true suspension bridge, that the roadway is supported by cables attached directly to vertical columns. That's a true suspension bridge. It has vertical columns. Okay, so in Australia, one of the most recognisable cable-stayed bridges is the Anzac Bridge. It was originally Glebe Island Bridge, made from reinforced concrete and steel cables. It dominates the Sydney skyline. Well, yeah. Probably the most famous cable-stayed bridge in Australia. So I will quickly say this is the Anzac Bridge. This is what it looks like. It's in Sydney. And the company I worked for, they were one of the designers, or that they worked on a retrofit, I think, of it. I knew people who were working on that bridge. But probably the most famous one is the Millau Viaduct, or the Viaduct, Viaduct de Millau? Viaduct? Yeah, that's about right. De Millau. Anyway, so it is, the reason why it's significant is because it's the tallest bridge in the world. It's not a great picture there, but we'll see if we can get a better picture. De Millau. Anyway, okay, so that tall one there is as tall as the Eiffel Tower. It's 300 meters tall. And the reason that's there is because there's a high-speed train that goes over there. And so, yeah, that's what it looks like. It doesn't actually look like there's a train on there. I thought it had a high-speed train on there. So what do I know? But the big thing there is that you just want to have the lost time of going up and down the hill. And also safety issues of driving up and down hills. Okay, so the longest one is the Russky Bridge, which is in Vladivostok, which is in eastern Russia, near China. So that's the longest cable-stayed bridge. Now, the reason it's still not as long as the Akashi-Kyaiko Bridge, but the reason why do we use these bridges? Why would anyone bother with cable-stayed? Well, so the cable-stayed, the difference between the two of them, if you have a look on the article. So here in the suspension bridge, what we have is that it's all about these two cables. There's one on each side, one on the left, one on the right. And this red line here is what it's all about. So that holds all of the forces that's the key part of all of the forces. These little cables here, all they do is they just join the road to that big, to the big hanging cable. Now, the towers hold up the cable, but a lot of the load is still laterally taken back to the anchors. So the anchors are incredibly important when you're talking about suspension bridges. So you need a really, really good rock foundation to work into when you're using suspension bridges. The other factor is that when you have a car stopping, or let's say a B double stopping, that puts an awful lot of lateral loads onto the bridge, so that the cable has to take that load, and that causes the towers to sway back and forth, and you get more deflection on suspension bridges. So when you have a cable-stayed bridge, this is a fan design, we'll talk about the other designs in a second, what you're doing is that the beam has to be stronger, because the cables, they are taking the load, but also the beam has to take some of the load. So those horizontal forces, they have to be taken by the beam and transferred through the cables. Now, the advantage of that is that they are much better, that when you have a heavy loaded train stop, that would be much better taken by the bridge in a cable-stayed bridge. If you have the good cost effectiveness in the concrete design of the deck, they can be cheaper. I think these days cable-stayed bridges are now cheaper than suspension bridges in most cases. But they're both used in large parts. There are different designs. Those designs all have different advantages and disadvantages. So Anzac Bridge, I'm pretty sure, is harp design. But all of them have different advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so that is the end of the bridges following along from Copeland. We just have a quick look at the summary, which they do talk about Piedmont and Spit Bridge, which have opening spit bridges, Tower Bridge being another one. Okay. So if we go back 12,000 years, primitive beam and suspension bridges. So we're talking logs and vines. The Greeks built bridges, the Romans built arches, and these arches, so like the viaducts and aqueducts, these were much more efficient designs. The designs started to disappear until we had Renaissance bridges. The famous one being the return to the Roman-style bridge efficiency is the Rialto. After the Rialto, we had Finlay, who built the first modern suspension bridge, but it was only little. And then we had bowstring girders, which look a bit like an arch bridge, like the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but they are slightly different. The advantage is they don't put a whole lot of load onto the abutments. Next, we have the first box girder. I think I just closed... Just because I'm not sure if I showed this before or not, but yeah, box girders, they can be made out of concrete, structural steel. So I think Tom Ugley's bridge, one of the sides is made out of steel, which always surprised me when I went and saw it. That it's often a thing to go, if you ever want to get a hot dog at, sorry, they don't sell hot dogs, hamburgers at Sylvania, there's Paul's, and down under the bridge is a nice place to have your lunch. Also, when I go for runs with my brother, we often go under Captain Cook Bridge, which I think it's my favourite part of the run, is running under the bridge, especially at night. I think it looks really good, the reflection of the water underneath the bridge. Okay, so box girders. We then move into balanced cantilever bridges. So the famous one is the Forth River Bridge. But there were some other important ones. One worth mentioning is people from Brisbane, they love Story Bridge. There you go. I was worried I'd missed it, but here we go. We get one last chance to talk about Story Bridge as a cantilever bridge. It's Australia's longest cantilever bridge. Okay, and then we can move on to Brooklyn Bridge. So Brooklyn Bridge is significant. So significant that there's an hour-long documentary on it. Worth watching. I'd recommend it. We started using concrete after World War II. That was the French dude. Can't remember his name, but he was the one who built the Gladesville Bridge. Then we finally have the Sydney Harbour Bridge in 1932. We talk about the Tacoma Narrows disaster, the Severn Bridge, which was a suspension bridge, and the Akashi Kaiko, which is the longest bridge in the world.